can I? HMR here. This could be a very interesting and contentious stream, so we want to try to be really respectful, because these topics, is it BPD, is it NPD, is it both? Well, obviously if it's BPD or NPD, it's good to know that. But this middle ground of is it both is really less clear than people may think. I'm just going to check the sound here, which is really a good thing, I suppose, considering. Whoops. If it'll let me check the sound, I could check the sound. Okay, because I hope this is stereo and not echoing. Which is really a good thing, I suppose, considering. I guess I have to say something else to hear how that sounds. Check the sound. I think it sounds okay from this end, but I'm not really sure. So if anybody wants to let me know, that'd be helpful. But anyway, on we go. So, yeah, there's a lot being said about BPD, NPD comorbidity. And like I said, those stats out there are hard to find. What's what? What's really up? And I think one of the most major problems with this issue, or concern of people's, is that too many people are guessing for themselves. Too many people are trying to diagnose people that they're with, people that are really hurting them. And sure, everybody wants to understand, but let's just start out with something on the thing. The 9 symptoms of BPD, right? Number 1 is fear of abandonment. Number 2 is unstable relationships. People with BPD tend to have, I think fear of abandonment is rather self-explanatory. Well, maybe not. Let me see. So fear of abandonment, because people with BPD are terrified of being abandoned or left alone. So even being late or going into another room for some people with BPD, it varies for all people, can feel like abandonment. Some people, in response to that, they may start begging you for something or clinging or start fights, etc. But some people may just cut off and, kind of go away, or like quiet BPDs, definitely. And so the behavior tends to have the opposite effect. So it drives others away, no matter what the behavior is, when somebody with BPD is fearing abandonment. So, that's interesting. I see something different on the computer here. Never mind. And number 2 is unstable relationships. So people with BPD tend to have relationships that are intense and short-lived. They say here, quote, fall in love quickly. I don't think that's what happens at all. But they can believe each new person is going to be the one that's going to make them feel whole. Pretty important to know that, because no one person can make these people feel whole. They need therapy. And of course, with friends, with significant others, with family members, they feel like they have an emotional whiplash because of the rapid, mood swings and splitting, right? Idealization to devaluation, anger, and or maybe more. And the third is, for BP, is unclear or shifting self-image. Well, sometimes people with BPD might feel a little good about themselves. It's different for everybody, but if they're untreated, they're basically going to feel not really good about themselves, and they don't really know who they are, and because they don't know who they are, and they really have lost their self, then they can change jobs frequently. They can study all kinds of things at university and keep changing. They can want to be your friend one day and not the next, want to be your partner one day and not the next, change the religion, change values, change goals, and even sexual identity. And that's not like, somebody changes a religion with forethought, of course, then they know what they want, right? But in the case of BPD, it's not like that. And the fourth criteria for BPD, impulsive, self-destructive behaviors. So that can be sensation-seeking or self-harm, and especially when people are upset, stressed, or they get into fear of abandonment. And so they might impulsively spend money, or it might be binge eating, driving recklessly, shoplifting, engaging in risky sex, or overdoing it with alcohol or drugs, or worse, being really addicted to them. And these risky behaviors might tend to help some people with BP in the moment escape things, really. But, of course, they're more harmful in the long term. and they're really not relationship friendly. And number 5 is self-harm, which includes, not wanting to be around anymore, but also other forms of self-harm and, like cutting and burning and that kind of thing. But there's many, many other ways people with BPD can self-harm as well as having suicidal ideation. Number 6, extreme emotional mood swings. Pretty much, I think, everybody kind of understands what that means. And 7 is chronic feelings of emptiness. So a lot of people with BPD, again, everybody's not the same. They feel like there's this hole or void inside them because, the self isn't there. So there is kind of a hole and a void in there in that regard. And they often feel like they're nothing or nobody. And it's a very uncomfortable, but it can be a terrifying feeling or a lot of overwhelming feelings. So many will then do the other, impulsive behaviors like drugs, food, sex, drinking, etc. because, nothing feels satisfying. And also they're trying to escape the pain. And the 8th trait is the explosive anger. So for people with BPD, they may struggle with intense anger and a short temper. Now, this is something that is true of people with quiet BPD as well, but they're going to internalize it. So you're not going to see, it's not explosive anger, it's rather implosive anger, but they have anger as well. And of course, people, with acting out BPD or externalizing, it could just be like screaming, yelling, throwing things, and they become completely consumed by rage. And so too can the quiet borderline become completely consumed with rage, but they will withdraw and they'll make it pretty hard on themselves. But that's when they just won't be anywhere for you to be able to find them or talk to them. And the 9th criteria is feeling suspicious or out of touch with reality, which has been described in other ways in other places. But often people with BPD will struggle with paranoia or suspicious thoughts about others' motives. And if they're under stress, they can, in a sort of fleeting way, not for a long time, but lose touch with some aspects of reality, which is dissociation. So that might, for somebody with BP, feel foggy. They might feel spaced out or as if they're outside their own body. I remember some of those wonderful experiences from when I had BPD. Oh yeah, that was loads of fun. Oh no, I didn't look. Okay, so it's echoing. I have 2 feeds. Oh, not this again. Just a second. I'll try to check. I have double checked this every which way to Sunday, and it's still, I don't get it. Let me try this and see what happens. I should have looked. I just went ahead. Is that any better now? I wonder. Because this thing, me and technology, I wonder if the sound is any better now. Because interestingly enough, it sounded okay at this end before, but I don't think this end is the end that matters that much. I wonder. Because me and technology, I wonder if the sound is any better now. Sounds pretty clear at my end, but I'm not sure. Oh, it's better now. Okay, well, I think I realized the mistake I made. Oh, darn. Because, never mind. I continued to work at it, but it's important because, the other 2 videos people told me were in mono, weren't actually, but there was a dominant speaker. Don't ask me why. So now I'm just going to quickly go through narcissistic personality traits, okay? Diagnostic criteria. And this isn't like official, I don't know where I am here. Has an inflated sense of self-importance, is preoccupied with fantasies of success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, believes that he or she is, quote, special, unquote, and can only be understood by other special or high-status people, requires excessive admiration, possesses a sense of entitlement, takes advantage of others, lacks empathy, is often envious of others or believes others are envious of them, behaves in an arrogant, egotistical, or haughty way. That's Haughty. So people with NPD might be described as being very self-absorbed or egotistical, but that can be confused with BPD as well because they can have some of those qualities or traits or difficulties as well. But the self-absorption rises to the level of a clinical disorder because it significantly interferes with relationships, occupation, or other domains in life. And it's thought that people with NPD, with this very vague term of egotistical style, are attempting to deal with underlying poor sense of self-worth. So then, how often does BPD, NPD comorbid really occur? And so, they can overlap and then they can co-occur, but just not as often as people online think, I think. Anyway, it says, I'm just reading something here from actually verywellmind.com. While the overlap between NPD and BPD are discussed quite often in the popular psychology literature and online, very few careful studies of the co-occurrence of NPD-BPD have been conducted, which is what I was saying in, I think, the last live stream I did. And then one such study found that only about 16% of patients with BPD also meet the criteria for NPD. However, another study that drew from a community rather than a treatment-seeking sample found that almost 39% of people with BPD also have NPD. So it's really, really strange. And then how can narcissistic personality affect borderline personality? Well, again, there's a number of theoretical reasons to believe that someone with both BPD and NPD would be less likely to get better. Yeah, it doesn't really help people out there, does it? People with NPD have been described as very resistant to treatment, and they often have poor insight into the ways that their behaviors are detrimental to themselves or others, or like they don't have insight and like they don't care more often than not. But not all people with NPD are exactly the same either. And so their motivation to change their behavior or even want to know, maybe, or have insight is not only very low, but it's also impaired by the loss of self in NPD as well, and arrested emotional development in early stages of childhood development. So, they don't really have an awareness, a lot of people with NPD. So, research suggests that people with both NPD and BPD are less likely to have their BPD symptoms get better over time. So, and one study followed BPD patients over 6 years, found rates of co-occurring NPD were fairly low, about 6%. In patients with BPD eventually went away, which they mean remitted, However, rates of co-occurring NPD were higher, with the BPD, that is, I guess, around 19%. Yeah, and people with BPD, so they didn't remit after 6 years. So they say there's a subset of individuals with non-remitting BPD and higher rates of NPD. But see how imprecise it is? It's really imprecise. So the relationships, one other thing I was going to say here was, relationships in people with BPD or BPD and NPD. Well, relationships of people with BPD are very dysfunctional, more often than not. If you add NPD into the mix, you can create even more disordered conditions and more, abusive and traumatic relationship or relating. Chaotic emotional life. People with BPD with the fear of abandonment associated with BPD. A person with co-occurring NPD may also take advantage of or manipulate others while having little empathy for others' concerns. So the combination obviously can be incredibly destructive. Well, the thing about that is, this is what I think is really hard for people to know for sure, right? Often, unless a person has been diagnosed, don't know how high the occurrence of actually this comorbid diagnosis is. But people are out there guessing. And here's the thing, right? This is what I really wanted to say was that, among other things, but there is narcissism in BPD. Of course, there's narcissism in everyone, but healthy narcissism is also something different from unhealthy narcissism, and various degrees. So I'm going to, thank you. I'm glad it sounds better now, and I hope it wasn't too bad in the beginning. And hopefully I will master this thing, because I've been using it for dual use purposes, which I think I'm going to quit. And then you have to keep changing the settings. So anyway, and when I was asking about the sound, Al said, you sound a bit robotic. Well, I don't know why I would be sounding a bit robotic, but oh goodness, that's not good. And somebody else said I sound like Gino Bonelli. Well, I really don't think that's true, unless it sounded that bad, yeah. I don't mean, never mind. Maybe some people like Gino Bonelli, who cares anymore? I don't. Craig, you said my friend with BPD confessed before I understood the significance that she felt she had a narcissistic personality component. Of course, I still don't understand, but I'm trying. Well, and if she confessed it, does that mean she was diagnosed? Is that what she was confessing? Or was she just thinking that? And then you said, my quiet BPD friend was so consumed with rage, she forgot what she wrote and denied it. Seems dissociated. And, so yeah, the sound is good. And, Craig, if ever you want to sing to us, put it on that first setting. Sing What You Won't Do for Love. Oh, yeah. Or how about I Will Do Anything for Love. No, I was thinking of Meatloaf. Yes. No, I don't think I'll be singing anytime soon. I can kind of sing sometimes, but, you know, I don't know. It has to be in the right key and stuff. So, little girl, it wasn't bad in the beginning. Oh, the sound. Well, good. Okay, so either way. So, since people are waiting on the sound, people haven't waited on anything else yet. So, one of my concerns for people is, you know, if a person hasn't actually, and I think this gets missed, flubbed, there isn't a lot of research on this. So, if a person, I don't think that it's that often that somebody goes to be assessed by a psychiatrist and actually comes out of there with a dual diagnosis of BPD, NPD, comorbid. So, given that, and I don't know about that, but most people, and I know a lot of clients I've spoken to over 30 years, and, you know, still am working with clients, I think maybe very few of them over the course of all that time said that somebody actually was diagnosed with both, because that's the issue out there for people is, you know, is this just BPD or is this narcissistic personality? And then, like, what if it's both? But people are guessing. And I think one thing that people need to understand, or people are often guessing, excuse me, and one thing that people need to understand about that, I think, is the narcissism component within borderline personality. So I when I say that, I want to be very careful, because I'm not saying that people with BPD are narcissistic or have narcissistic personality disorder. But yeah, there's those narcissistic defenses, right? They're infantile narcissistic defenses in both what psychiatry calls, just a second here, it's very dry in here, personality disorders, but not to the same degree and not really with the same presentation. But here's a really tricky thing for people. How are you supposed to, and I don't mean to talk down to anybody, because, you know, you're experiencing stuff, you might be getting very hurt, or you were very hurt and beyond, and it's like, but how can anybody actually ferret that out unless it's like really super obvious in some way? And Craig said, not diagnosed narcissistic, just thought it of herself. Also, strong messiah feeling. No, yeah, but see, that's an individual variance that may or may not mean one thing or another. So when she said that because she thought that, but she doesn't know that. And that's another thing. Why I think so much of this happens, and I'm not saying there isn't anybody out there that's comorbid, but I don't think as many people as people think, because BPD can be pretty encompassingly, I don't want to say similar to NPD, because it's not in so many ways, but that overlap can be so confusing for people. You know, people with BPD can be really self-absorbed, and maybe not always in the exact same way as a narcissist is. But people with BPD can be they can take on a overcompensatory. This would be the difference. Well, I guess everything is, but they can seem really haughty themselves, because they're going from either feeling, people with BPD will go from feeling so bad about themselves to then overcompensatingly sort of, trying to make up for that, and then maybe just get a sense for, I don't really know how to explain it. It's so individual. Then they can think that they're better than they are. So but it's the extreme vacillation again, right? It's sort of like idealization versus devaluation. It's like, well, now I feel really good. So it kind of goes to the life scripts of Eric Berne, that like when they feel okay, then you have to be unokay. You can't be okay when they're okay. So they feel like they're better than you. And then they try to vertically relate down to you, which is all about defenses, as opposed to a person with narcissistic personality disorder who's going to kind of come from that I'm better than you place for sure, kind of consistently and always. And not just it's all defense too, but it's consistent for them, if that makes any sense. And then Craig said, being a sound pro, I say don't buy new stuff until you make the old stuff work. Different settings and all. Oh, a sound pro. I get it. Okay. Well, I didn't buy new stuff. I just was using this for two different purposes. And I think I kind of understand it now. Like, I say, it's sort of like, just, I don't want to be too off topic for too long, but it's sort of like, when I get into the audio thing, whether I'm using a microphone or not, I seem to want to, for some reason, duplicate the input, and I'm not sure why I do that. So, not helpful. But I'm not. I understand the settings somewhat, and I did It's interesting though because I did like, what do you call it? Like just a test for like about 3, 4, 5, 10 seconds. With a setup before I hit, I changed the settings so that I could just start recording, which I know how to do now really well. And so I recorded and it was clear on my computer and it was coming through both speakers. So I don't know. Maybe, I'm somebody who doesn't want to read the manual. You know what I'm saying? I've been using this OBS for quite a while, but mainly only for live streaming. And then again, you see, if I'd go back and use my MacBook, I would have none of these problems for some reason. But when I use the PC, it's different. So, but yeah, it's not anything new. It's just me and this one particular problem for some reason. So, and then I have no idea why the other two videos came out with, people said they sounded mono, but when I listened on my phone, like really carefully, there was a tad bit of sound coming out of the other speaker, which doesn't really matter because it was predominant. I don't even know how that happened. So anyway, I'll keep working on that for sure. And maybe I'll have to like read some instructions or watch some videos on how come I keep making mistakes with this. And in the meantime, getting back to my topic, it's like I wonder how many times people are making mistakes thinking that somebody with BPD is BPD comorbid NPD. And the other aspect of this, and it's very much an online and probably, not just a particular to YouTube thing, but it's the way that people are talking about narcissists. So I'm not saying they're all wrong or anything, but there's becoming a lot of colloquial, just general parlance kind of nonsense about narcissists, probably about people with BPD too. Now, some of that is people's experience. I'm not saying people's experience is nonsense, but I don't know when's the last time somebody checked out some of those videos, narcissistic abuse and blah, blah, blah. And it's like there's a million people talking about it for sure, if not more. And I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about, but it's like, well, and here's the most interesting thing or scary thing I've seen in quite a while on YouTube. I don't know how I came across this channel because I don't want to watch it anymore, but I had to find out what it's about. So okay, I probably shouldn't name it, but anyways, it's all about empaths. And the person who does the videos, I don't see the empath there, but that's just me. It doesn't mean anything. It's maybe just the way he presents himself or something. But the last video I saw, he was going on and on about how you can really destroy the narcissist and what one key thing you need to do. And he's got this like recipe of how to do it. And it's a channel for empaths, whatever that means, right? And the next thing you know, now they're calling themselves super empaths, okay? And then the next step is super empath warriors. And I'm like, so if you're a super empath, whatever that means, and you're now a warrior, and your thing is to destroy the narcissist, I would kind of say, well, I think you ran out of empathy. So what is that? But so this idea is because narcissists have been really, I'm not here to defend them or anything, but they've been really all fused together, like a monolithic group, and that's not true of them either. There's narcissists, and then there's narcissists, and then there's malignant narcissists. And of course, the vulnerable, covert, closeted, inverted, whatever we're calling it today, narcissist, is very different from the overt, grandiose narcissist, but they're not all exactly the same either. And then how would you know if you're with, like, the covert, inverted, closet, whatever, collapsed, vulnerable, inverted narcissist? Isn't it getting ridiculous? I think it is. Closet comes from Masterson, though, so, hey, covert makes sense, but this vulnerable makes sense in a way, too, but, So it's not really accurate to equate quiet BPD as being vulnerable narcissism. Could it be for some people? Well, maybe, but is it for everybody? No. So there's this idea out there, it seems pretty prevalent, just all over the internet. I'm not here to say it's right or wrong, I don't know. But that all narcissists are the same, and that they're all motivated for the same exact reason, and they're all doing the same exact thing in these 5 steps, 10 steps, 12 steps, 15 steps. Why, they're triangulating and they're gaslighting, I'm sure, and things like that. But again, they're not a monolithic group, and there are people with NPD that do seek help. And are they more like, who knows? Are they like 5 traits or 6 traits and not 8 or 9? They're definitely not malignant narcissists. Anyway, it gets all really confusing. Hey there, Deb. You said, hello, AJ. I'm wondering if you do diagnostic testing in your practice. Well, yes, but it's not like something I do a lot of. And the other thing about that is, it is very, very difficult to assess this and other comorbidity factors. Like, one thing I wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole, for sure, is this bipolar BPD thing going on. This comorbidity or whatever that's about today. MC, my BPD boyfriend says he has narcissistic tendencies. Well, and I'm sure he's an expert too, but I hear ya. In some ways I can see it, but he also believes in the primal instincts of, well, that's helpful, isn't it? He says he doesn't worship, but he loves to discuss the army of, and I'm just not saying it because of AI, right? He also has the Freemasonry and I'm not sure what the other, yes, I think I've heard of that, but I'm not going to try to say it. Tattoos on his back. I'm not saying these things are related to BPD, comorbid NPD, or either or, but he is stiff-necked about it all. Well, which I would take to mean pretty rigid. We look for rigidity in these things, but that sounds like, I don't know, I mean, so he thinks he has narcissistic tendencies, but he believes it's the primal instincts of that, which makes no logical sense whatsoever, really, does it? I mean, somebody could believe that, but it doesn't make logical sense. And if he believes that but doesn't exactly worship Satan, okay, and being involved in those other things, I can't tell, because where my mind goes, just to muddy up the waters even more. Sounds psychopathic, rather. Who knows? I don't think you can base, but that's looking at more of the other things you said, right? You can't really base it on that alone. But he sounds like he's out there somewhere in a less than logical place. Hey there, Billy the Goat. Peekaboo back to you. I like that. Peekaboo. I don't get that every day. So I think, it's like, I'm not here to say I know it all or I know perfectly what would look like BPD, comorbid NPD, or what doesn't. Because I think a lot of people with BPD can be right on the cusp or the edge and very much replicate a lot of what people might go, well, that's got to be narcissistic because, and I don't even know about, I think we live in a society today that's so narcissistic, the culture, that gaslighting is probably something that even people with codependency do, people with BPD do. I don't think, but not like narcissists do it. So, I mean, gaslighting, if you feel gaslit by somebody, does that automatically make them a narcissist? I don't think so anymore. One would have thought that was sort of logical in the past, but we're living in a world where, to one degree or another, with whatever's going on, and I'm not going to get into that because I don't know, but I think we're being gaslit on a mass scale. So, well, yeah, I believe that comes from narcopaths, basically. But anyway, so what I just really wondered if, people would find helpful, or if people have any questions, not that I have all the answers on this, but I just experience, even with clients, and I wonder, like, to the other part of the title, so is the person in your life, or who was in your life, or who you were in a relationship with, do they have BPD, or do they have NPD, or do they have BPD, NPD comorbid? Does it really matter, at the end of the day? Since it's, like, I couldn't believe, because I've been looking into this for quite some time. Like I said, I still have a couple videos I want to do on this more specifically, but there is a real absence of much study. And yet, if I look at these, clinical books, professional things, they will constantly be talking about this. Well, not constantly, but they will get there in various other iterations of things. But the bottom line is they don't ever make it clear, because it sounds, when I've read things, it reads to me like they don't really know what they're describing. So I don't know if that's true or not. But I've talked to quite a few people about it too, and nobody seems to be very sure. So, and I think, I think I've dealt with, like, I've thought, I've said my mother is comorbidity both. And if I had to, questioning that, if I were to say, well, then I would put her in NPD. Like, if like I, but like, so that's what happens with people when you have someone in your life and it's like you're seeing all this stuff, or maybe they at least have a diagnosis of BPD. I don't know, but I wonder how many people with codependency, trying to parse this out, how is that helpful to people? Because even with a lot of people with BPD, and especially untreated, but even, quote, substantial, unquote, treatment can help people with BPD to a point, but they may need more work than that in therapy. So I'm just wondering, why does it matter? Because relationships with people with BPD are so difficult, so painful, so hurtful, and so unlikely to work out, that whether NPD is in the mix or not, this is what I'm wondering about for people in general, for people with codependency. Craig, quote, gaslit on a mass scale, unquote. I will be open to this interpretation of our culture. Well, I'm not saying it's by culture. I'm saying it's by corporatocracy and technocrats. So in other words, the powers of the world, so to speak, right? On that level, way up there, I believe they're gaslighting us on a mass scale, because I don't know about you or anyone else here, not to go too far afield, but what's going on with this virus thing? What's going on with this stuff? What's going on with, like, hey, you got to wear a mask to go here, you got to do this, got to do that, got to do it. Is it really all about that, or is it something? And I don't know. But I think the fact that I don't know, and many people feel like they don't know, and many people are coming down on the one side of it is this, and lots of people coming down on the other side of it is not that. That's not real. It's this. I kind of think that's gaslighting 101. So, like, I don't know though. It's hard to parse. All I know is I don't trust mainstream media because of corporatocracy. So if people start with what is corporatocracy and how is that in play in the world today, then you will know just by the the media is owned by corporatocracy. And there's videos out there that show at different times of the day, on a certain day with a certain story, how every single, at least like in the US, but I think it went around the world, like in Western countries, every single program on every single channel at a given time and a given day will talk about when there's a big story, or like what's going on now in the world is all they ever talk about. I think, I don't know, I don't watch much, but they're fed what to say, and if they go off the script, or a guest on their quote news shows unquote goes off the script, you never see them again, and like they're just not invited back. Deb said, one way it matters to me whether she's BPD or BPD, maybe mean or NPD, is that a diagnosis of BPD gives me hope that she can recover, from what I understand. NPD is less likely to recover. Well, that's very true on the base of it all, but again, not everybody with NPD is the same, but yes, because in many areas when I'm researching this, they just throw up their hands and say, but there is no treatment for NPD. But then there are people out there, there's a few pioneers out there who believe there is. And then I look at Cahoot's work, and, I've used that often, what the foundation that he laid down. When I've worked with clients that I'm not sure, I've worked with some people with NPD for sure, and maybe more vulnerable, but maybe some kind of just in the middle. And the other thing would be, and people that seem to be BPD and NPD comorbid, but then it's hard for me to describe, what that looked like, and yeah, it's interesting. But I hear what you're saying, Deb. It's okay if you're messing up your acronyms. It happens. I mean, geez, and if I'm typing, I don't know if you're on a phone, but when I type on a phone, I'm like, God, this phone hates me. Because I type the word right, but it has to change it every time. And then if I misspell something, whereas it's asleep. Anyway, I think, yes, but I think from everything you've shared about your daughter prior, there's no reason to think she doesn't have BPD. So BPD is one thing, and it can be, unfortunately for some people, it's not as treatable as one would hope. And that just depends on severity, depends on a lot of other moving pieces, and it depends on whether or not they're ever going to open up to treatment. And GB, I think the pandemic is about power control, big pharma, and total financial reset. Well, yeah, and I think it's also what we've been experiencing, I believe, is soft martial law at this point. And there's a suspension of all of our, quote, if we had them before, rights and freedoms and whatever, in all countries. So, and corporatocracy is really about the pretty established reality, but I'll just say the ideology of that countries aren't countries anymore. They're owned. And so that's kind of what's going on up there in the power structures of narcopathy and psychopathy. And you said, yes, absolutely. Well, that's what I think is going on. And so I think we're being gaslit because, I research and I delve into this stuff, and I try to, I'm trying to find some hope, and I don't know what's going on, whatever's going to play out, and, but I have these ideas about could be this, could be that, hope it goes like this, but I think it's like that. I just think that's an example of, I'm cautious. I have some strong beliefs about it. But I think, too, it's like that's what gaslighting does to us. It's like, okay, well, I think I'm pretty sure about this because I know this, but maybe not. So that's what I mean, being gaslit on a major scale. Yeah, and GB said gaslit on a giant scale. Yes. So I wonder if anybody wants to, so Deb raised a really important point about, yes, if you have a loved one and they have BPD, there can be a lot more hope that they can really get treated and do it really well. I wonder, for people with codependency, when the relationship isn't working out anyway, and Deb has an adult child, so it's different for moms, in a 25% for sure, or moms in general, or moms that care. Let me put it that way, because a lot of moms don't care, but Deb is a mom who cares. But so in other relationship types, how does it help people with codependency? So many people stay so focused on this, right? Like, there was someone on live stream the other night, no disrespect to them. They said they had been compulsively trying to figure out if this person was just BPD or BPD NPD. And somebody else on another live stream in the last few weeks or up to a month ago was saying, and again, no disrespect to them either, they were just saying, I can't go forward with my healing until I know this. And it's like, does anybody find that a tad problematic? Because is that really the reason that people aren't making decisions? And that's what I think is the really most important part of talking about, are they BPD or NPD or BPD, NPD comorbid, because it seems like a lot of professionals don't have a clue. And I'll say it's really difficult. And as I've been researching to do a couple of really articulate videos about this that I can get as factual as possible, I've been researching this for almost 8 months now. Not all day, every day, right? But I still haven't come to doing the next video yet. I'm getting closer. But man, nothing is really clear on this. So I think for people with codependency and in these relationships, especially significant other, etc., I think it's really important, again, the focus on the cluster B, taking away from the focus on people with codependency and what they need to figure out for themselves. And abuse is abuse. And some people with BPD can abuse rather similarly to people with NPD, but it's not really the same. And what's the biggest difference between these two personality disorders? Well, there are several differences that are known, but what's the big difference? It doesn't matter if you are with a person with BPD or a person with NPD or a person that might be comorbidity both. You're going to be being abused. You're going to be going through hell. And the relationships are toxic and very dangerous to, mental health, psychological health, physical health. So does it really matter? And this is the question that I would put to anybody who's in a relationship like that, or has been, or is still longing for, or can't get to no contact, or, people with, it's not just all about the codependency, but people say they gotta figure it out, or they can't heal. And I think what that is in a lot of people's cases could well be sort of in the subconscious, and it could be totally unconscious, I don't know, but this desire to find some piece of closure and really figuring out if they are just BPD or BPD, NPD or NPD, how does that bring any more closure to the experience of the wounds that need to be healed? So this is why I think it's an important topic, because obviously I'm still not ready to just present I don't know that I'll ever be ready to present, quote, facts, unquote, but I don't want to just be playing guessing games, right? So pretty much I'd rather form things in a question right now than categorically say something, because unlike some other people on YouTube, I really care about what I'm saying being relatively as accurate as I can make it. So that's what's so confusing about it. It's frustrating too. And Deb said she also has some grandiosity. She raps and believes she was a big deal in Australia, but mostly she has a major inferiority complex. She's all over the place. Well, and what you just said there, some people often with BPD can have some grandiosity, but then the major inferiority complex, which people with BPD people with NPD may likely well sort of like have, but they don't ever go there. Like they don't waffle. They have stronger defenses, that's for sure. So her being all over the place still sounds like, just from what you said there, that could well be still BPD. So, because I remember when I was, in recovery and when I was in group therapy and everything, and I went through that 3 times, that program, in about a 2.5 year span. And I remember after the first time, they gave me these, or they showed me, I don't think I got to take them away with me, forms of their assessments of me when I came in, and then after like 7 months of 5 hours a day, 5 days a week treatment, and they were measuring grandiosity and they were measuring on things, and I was diagnosed with BPD, or labeled with it, actually, not assessed for it, but I certainly never had anything else. Well, generalized anxiety disorder, which I found out what that was attached to. So yeah, it wasn't generalized anxiety disorder at all. But I didn't have any other co-occurring, comorbid, or diagnoses. So, and I experienced like they were measuring my grandiosity on this scale with I read all my mental health records, by the way, so there's no secrets in there. Somebody didn't write down NPD and not tell me about it, because I would have read it. GB, the important thing for me is that my ex displayed lots of BPD traits, and this made the relationship impossible, and I had to leave. Too traumatic to stay, regardless of any potential NPD traits. Well, and that's a really good point, because that's another thing that some people are doing as well. They're like, does this person, and I'm not just saying this because of what you said, GB, but some people are like, well, but like, I'm pretty sure they're borderline. Like, I have a lot of people come to me, and among other things, they start off in the first session peppering me with questions because, like, does this sound like BPD to you? Because they don't really know. But the thing is, so some people think there was somebody with traits of, some people think there was somebody with it, but they don't know. But like I must say, most people that describe it to me, they're certainly in the ballpark. I mean, certainly isn't a relationship to pursue. Certainly they are being hurt and abused. So like you said, GB, it's really good that you were able to take care of yourself that way, and just that you knew you had to leave because it was too traumatic to stay. Whether or not they were, BPD traits, or she would qualify for diagnosis of BPD or more. So, and that's what I think is so important for codependents to think about. And Deb, you said, I've been in a few programs that are there for relatives, partners, or friends of people with mental illness. The instruction for dealing with people with BPD, NPD, schizophrenic, autism, etc. was all the same. Well, that's interesting. If you could share just briefly what was the key of that, if there's a way to sort of condense that together, because to me, I don't see how that's really effective, but Deb, Sash Bear and a program called Connections put on through mental health facilities were very helpful. So I wonder what it's like if they're telling loved ones and relatives and friends, etc., the instruction of dealing with somebody with BPD or NPD or schizophrenia or autism would be all the same. I find that kind of interestingly sort of like weird. But I don't know, because I don't know how they would put that together that way. Hey Wills, how you doing? Simply because, especially with autism, which is so different from schizophrenia, which is each so different from NPD, and then always there's been this, well, because now they're diagnosing people with BPD with schizophrenic tendencies. I don't know what that means either, but because that was how borderline personality got its stupid name, was because they couldn't figure out and trying to distinguish it from schizophrenia and psychosis versus neurosis. And I know when I was in a group therapy program, there was this part-time group, and it was mostly schizophrenic people, I think. And they were like they were there 3 days a week or something. So they had a few other rooms or whatever where they do their stuff. But I remember one time, some people were kind of making fun of a couple of them for something. I can't remember what it was. And I was a little bit, a lot younger and way more mature. So I guess I joined in. And then one of the therapists, as would always be my experience, but I'm not here to gripe, took me into her office to read me the riot act, not the other 4 people that were doing what I was doing. And she said, if you only realized, I don't know what she said there, but for the grace of God, go you, like meaning me. But she said, not that far apart. And I didn't know what she meant then, so I still don't really get it, actually. But maybe there's a point there. And Deb said the programs are both based on mindfulness and DBT. Key was validating the ballad. I don't see what the heck in the world that has to do with autism, though, but okay. And it would be a little different for people with schizophrenia as well. And of course, a narcissist couldn't give a crap, apparently, right? But, I'm sure it was helpful for at least BPD, if not. But to go at them all with the same, that's interesting to me. But yeah, validating the ballad and trying not to, if you can't validate, don't invalidate, right? Which really can be helpful for how people try to interact with people with BPD. I don't know about everything else. But the thing about that is, and you know, in autism, it's not a matter of something is valid or not valid. Like people with autism in the spectrum, whatever it is, I have high functioning Asperger's. I'm not walking around all day. Can you validate this for me? Because I thought about this and now what? Or I have this. So I don't know. Anyway, interesting approach. And probably condensed like that because they can't get the funding they need. MC, I found closure when my boyfriend told me he had BPD. And I started doing the research. I haven't spoken to him in a week now. In all honesty, I'm realizing it's not a relationship, so I'm staying no contact. Well, good for you. And I mean, yes, if someone has a diagnosis, that's a good thing to know, right? Northern Pike, hey there. Hi, AJ. Recently found your channel. You made sense of a 10-year abuse relationship at the hands of a BPD. I've been watching a lot of your videos. Thank you so much for making something about making sense. Well, you know, thank you for saying that. I'm glad my videos have been helpful. Try to make sense. And sorry for what you've been through, though. A 10-year abusive relationship. I'm really sorry to hear that. And I'm just glad the videos are helpful. GB, not saying I wasn't heartbroken. I still have lots of healing to do. Oh, no, I understand that. Yeah. And things to learn about my own patterns, but ultimately it's all about self-preservation. Well, yes, GB, and it is for so many people, and I'm really glad that I'm sorry that you were going through what you were going through, that you had to get to that place, because that's a lot of pain and trauma, but it's good that you recognize that, because, you know, a lot of people don't recognize it, and they don't take the steps towards self-preservation. So I'm really sorry for what you went through and to hear what you went through, but I'm glad that you were able to take that step for self-preservation when you realize, like, hey, I really got to take care of me here or else, right? And Deb, we were a class of about 12 weeks, once per week. Oh, yes, because I'm so used to seeing PW as people with, and I'm like, what? People with what? But no, per week, okay. We came from all areas. Connections was put on by Lakeshore Mental Health in Whitby. Oh, okay. Yeah. The place a shrink threatened to send me in the early 70s for... I wasn't even guilty what he said, but never mind. Every time I go... If I've been to Whitby, been past Whitby, even when I was playing hockey years ago, it's like I would always think of that stupid shrink for some reason. Bad association. You said I also took a 3-weekend connections course in Toronto. Oh, cool. And of course, that's helpful for sure, but it's part of the equation, right? The other part of the equation is people with BPD getting into treatment. And of course, another block to that as well, besides what they often have going on, is especially in, Ontario, Canada here, it is really the funding. Where'd all the funding go? You know, it's pretty sad. So I got contacted some years ago, can't remember how many, by a paper in a city in southwestern Ontario, just down the highway from Toronto, and a person was asking me questions about, wasn't it great that they were now going to, in this smaller city, have a program of DBT, because it had been piecemeal prior to that, and they were going to do that, and they were going to offer it to 50 people a year. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like probably 500,000 or more need it, and you're going to get 50 people a year. And then they said, and we're not going to, the reporter, asking me the question said, and they're not going to limit it to BPD only. And I was just like, I gave her some choice quotes. Wheels, to answer the question you posed in the title, yes and no. To me, it was a relief to know the hell I've lived has a possible name, but it can be hard not to get caught up in that label. Yeah. Hi there, Ellie. How you doing? Well, I mean, I think in a perfect world that isn't drowning in the, let's just say psychopathy of, because they're narcopaths, but they're psychopaths of, the corporatocracy and the technocracy and what we're going, the big gaslighting thing in the world right now that's been going on in different iterations all along. What they have planned for us next, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it portends any fun. But with all of that, it's sort of like, So sometimes when you can know for sure what's going on with somebody, it might matter. But again, I wonder, because a lot of people are putting that obsessive focus out on trying to figure the stuff out, because I think it's a way of denying, like until GB said, right, you get to this place where hopefully, people recognize, oh my God, like self-preservation demands that you do something differently. But a lot of people don't kind of get there as it would be expected people would to the self-preservation place, because they're still so ensconced in trying to figure this stuff out that I'm here to say I don't know everything about by any means, but that professionals and psychiatry don't know clearly a whole lot about it either. Let me put it that way. And Wheels said, struggling with the quote why unquote with my dad quite badly, but I'm not to do that. You're not trying to do that, okay? Because why doesn't change the how. Abuse is abuse no matter why it's happening. Well, yes, and I think that the why question is not the most helpful question for people who have been traumatized and abused and are in any part of that recovery, and or just maybe trying to, get out of the shock and awe of it all. To get away from it, first and foremost. And I always said, I'm doing well today. I just woke up from a nap. You went swimming. Oh, cool. I guess you're talking to Wheels, actually. So, or maybe not. I don't know. Interesting, where I live, they sent a notice around the other day just when you mentioned swimming. And, of course, I guess because there is a pool here. It's over behind the other building. I don't really care. But, they have all these rules, and there can only be 30 people in the pool area, and I wonder what that goes down to for the pool, because it's not an Olympic-sized pool or anything, right? So I don't think there's really anything to catch. But by the same token, I don't think I'd want to be in the pool. Who knows? It's crazy. And you said you're glad you tuned in. I think that no, it does. Ali said, no, it does not matter if the person isn't willing to seek help. Abuse is abuse either way. Excuse me. And it doesn't matter what the label is. But at the same time, I understand wanting closure. But it isn't really closure. That's the whole thing. Somebody's been really traumatically abused, and you get a label. How does the label give you closure? It doesn't really. It's healing, and the healing and recovery journey, how people need to find their own closure. So, but that's interesting. We often agree to disagree here, Ali, for some reason. It's because you live in the boondocks of Ontario, right? Information is still no, I'm teasing you, totally. I'm not being condescending, I swear. I'm just really totally teasing you. So the other thing is, when you're going through this in a relationship with somebody, or have been, obviously, this is the other real sticking point for people in the experience of it all, the horror of the trauma, and who you thought they were in the beginning, and now what's happening, or what happened and unfolded already for those who are out of these relationships. And the thing is, so why are people keeping themselves pretty much probably unknowingly? I don't think anybody goes, well, this is horrible and I'm being super abused, but I'm going to figure out, I don't think it works that way. But this is what happens to so many people. And I guess one of the things I've been trying to say is I try to keep information as accurate as I can here, because, other people are not so caring about that. And I guess maybe not everybody who watches every YouTuber cares about that. I don't know what that's all about. But I think that even at times when I've tried to parse things carefully between BPD and NPD, let alone if there's comorbidity or not, what I've really become really aware of, just by interacting on live streams and working with clients, of course, is that on the experiential side of it, which of course I had it in family of origin, and I've had it in my life too. I've had 2 quiet BPD partners, and I've had their exes now, and I had that BPD NPD horror show of a quote partner unquote 2004 to 2006. Boy, that opened my eye. Sometimes we still have a little bit more to learn. So, I've been on both sides of, BPD, but not narcissistic personality, except for it was rampant in my family. So the point is, when you're experiencing it, to really figure out exactly what it is, which I think a lot of people want to do these days, I guess what I'm trying to say is I became really aware with clients and on live streams that when people are suffering that much, I don't think it matters what the label is. I think it matters more that people get into action, which is very difficult, get away from the person and or a family of origin like that, and get into healing and recovery, and then work things through one step at a time, because they're obviously commingled and they're complicated and they're multi-layered in people's lives. Not everybody with codependency has a cluster B parent, but many people do. Ali said, exactly, AJ. I guess what I meant is I can understand why people are trying to make sense of it, even though it isn't going to help. Well, yeah, and you said, and it is people's want for closure in that regard, but it doesn't provide closure. Like I've never had a client say, oh, okay, well, so she's really actually BPD for sure. Good. Okay, I'm fine now. No, there's still a lot of work to do. But people do need, it is important when, like when I work with clients, it's really important to validate their experience. Like I would never quibble over labels with somebody who really feels like they went through this, and this because of that. That's not important at that point either. And Will said, so you can swim, but you can't talk to someone unless you're standing 6 feet apart. Well, I think probably in that pool you have to probably swim 6 feet apart, which might mean there can only be 2 people in a pool at a time. I mean, it's longer than 6 feet, but I don't have spatial capacity, so I really can't speak to that, right? But I don't think they're going to let people, because they have someone monitoring it, they said. And I'm like, well, goody. Why don't they monitor more of the crime that goes on around here? Like, I wouldn't go down the stairs at night. No, you just never know who you might meet in a laundry room. I got a washer dryer. Thank God I don't have to go to the laundry room. And this isn't a bad neighborhood. So imagine the bad neighborhoods. But, but you can swim, but you can't talk to someone unless you're standing 6 feet apart. And, or yes, wearing a mask. Yes, doesn't it make perfect sense in a gaslit, narcissistic, narcopathic, controlled world? Yeah. And recently I did see a little bit of news for a couple other people that are in Ontario here. But, the Premier of Ontario is really mad today, furious, apparently, because somebody had a party somewhere and they had 200 people to it. Okay, so it breaks all the rules, but then what? Because we always hear this part, but then we don't hear, well, you know what? 16 people from that party or that gathering on the beach they were moaning about their, last holiday here in Ontario, the Premier, is like, I don't hear the news that comes out and says, well, 16 or 20 or 50 of those people tested positive for this blasted thing. No, we don't hear that at all. So I don't know what's up with that. But so what happens when the Premier is really angry is my point. Because actually, so far, nothing. He just is really angry. I think a few people got a few tickets or something. I don't know. And Ali, oh, no, I think Wheels was saying about the pool thing, what I said about the pool thing here. But yeah, you said you went swimming in a lake. That's good. I guess. You never know what's in a lake. I'm just saying. No, I'm kidding. Northern Pike, been out of my 10-year abusive BP relationship for 4 years now. Turned MGTOW. Well, I totally understand. Happiest I've been in years. Well, good for you, because I totally respect MGTOW men, red pill men. Have a lot of clients who make that decision and choice, and I totally respect that. So good for you. And you've been happiest that you've ever been in years. That's great to hear. Happy for you on that score, and sorry about, the 10-year thing. But yes, 4 years out at least, and I'm glad you're happier, and happy with your decision there. Ali, I agree with you, AJ. That's why I said it doesn't matter what they're labeled as. Oh, yeah, well, it's okay, Ali. I wasn't thinking that you didn't agree or it doesn't matter. And you said, oh, I didn't know we didn't agree. Oh, well, maybe we do. Who knows? It's okay. It doesn't really matter, right? It's not like the earth shakes or something if we disagree, but maybe we don't. It's fine. I'm not worried about it, so don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we understand each other. Because I think when I read your other comment about, but at the same time I understand wanting closure, yes, I probably put a little bit too much meaning on that, and I came back and revised it. So I don't think we're disagreeing at all. Sarah, good evening, AJ. I know he has BPD, helps some, but also brings to mind the no closure and never getting them totally out of my life. And why is it that you won't get them totally out of your life? Because other than, I mean, maybe you have kids together. Sitai, to Ali, so long as you were swimming in a mask, you're good. Joking, yes. Yeah, can you imagine that? Being out in the middle of a lake all by yourself. And this mask stuff's really got me going. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I haven't done it so far. So, but who knows? Anna, how does a person heal from a toxic bond with a BPD NPD? Well, let me just first say the same way that you would heal from a toxic or trauma bond with a BPD or an NPD. So it's pretty much similar if they're BPD, NPD. I just want to add that in, because what we're talking about and how people are fighting so hard to figure it out, and everybody's playing amateur diagnostician. So, and the answer to that, is not a one step, not a one easy thing. But the first thing that people need to do to heal from like a trauma bond is to first get out of the relationship, and second, go no contact. That means full no contact, no looking back, blocking them on everything. And then it's about really getting into therapy and recovery, and it's a process. So I can't just explain it all right here. And it's also a very individual process, I find, with clients. Each person comes with their own experience, what's layered back to family of origin, and what's happened, with where people started off in life, with the roots of codependency. Because again, I'm not going to say everybody in these relationships is 100% of people are codependent. And if you've been with them for I don't want to like mimic somebody else. But it's not like a 2 or 3 day thing and boom, this is automatic. But that's logical fallacy and false equivalency all over the place. But the bottom line is I would say, 95 to 97% of people probably have codependency. But I've had clients, been in a relationship with somebody with BPD, for example, and we searched and we looked and we and they just weren't codependent. So not 100% is all I'm saying. Where was I? So the answer to your question, Anna, is a very long and involved one and very individual one as well. And Wheels, AJ, your premier sound like our premier. The premier sounds like our tyrant of a governor. He got someone arrested for opening a gym 2 days before he was supposed to. Well, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think our premier's actually got anybody arrested for anything. He gets mad a lot, though. Because he's not so effectual at, he's following a script, for crying out loud. That's what I see in his lectures from I don't even watch it anymore. Like, I still get the emails in my thing for some reason, but like, when I'm subscribed to the CPAC where the videos are for Canada for these people, but I'm like, I just go, delete, I don't care what he said. Delete, I don't care what they said. Craig, I met my first 2 people struggling with BPD since quarantine. Both have preferred typing to cell phone. Is that a thing? Being more comfortable with writing than voice only? Or a one-off? No, it's not a one-off. It's probably not true of everybody with BPD or quiet BPD. But it's true of a lot of people. And then, of course, it depends on their age, too. Because I think the younger people are, what's that, probably mid-30s now even, the more they're likely to want to text, as I found out with some people I know, too. And it's like, I can't do this. Like, somebody texts me and I'm, like, going back and forth. And I'll be like, and I've had clients that want to do that. I'm like, no, I can't. I just, like, I'm older. I'm not, I'd rather use voice or I'd even email or something. So, but yeah, it's common that a lot of people with BPD, because they're rather, they're trying to connect. They don't know how to connect. And it's rather a circuitous route to connect. So, yes, a lot of them will use technology today. Whether that's some kind of crazy app that sends messages or texting or whatever. preferring that over boys. So it's not just a one-off, that's for sure. And you got to watch out sometimes, depending, like if it's, these people that get on dating apps and you're meeting someone online, etc., and then you're having long distance communication. If there's a lot of texting or a lot of email, then what happens with a lot of people with BPD, it happens with narcissists as well, that they're going to send you a lot of lovely poems and song lyrics and songs to listen to because they don't really have the language, especially narcissists, but people with BPD don't know what to say. And so they hide behind song lyrics and poems. You got to watch out for that too. I mean, people that are dating people online. And Deb said, what does it take for people with BPD to be willing to accept help? I know that is a blanket question, but I cannot believe the suffering she endures. She is so resistant. Well, the reason that, what does it take? I don't know, because it is very different for everyone. And some people never get to what it takes, sadly enough. But the reason is because, like you said, where was I there? She's so resistant. Well, the resistance is really, it's not like they don't even really connect on an emotional level, even if they do intellectually at some level. They don't connect the suffering to the resistance, and that the resistance, if they would stop being resistant and get treatment, that they wouldn't be in as much pain or suffering as much. And in that regard, whether unconscious, subconscious, or otherwise, they continue to make a choice to suffer, because pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. But they might not know that. But why the resistance is because of how things really feel. How huge they feel, how massively outside of oneself it feels, the pain, whatever, the agony, whatever she's feeling, the terror that it generates, which is the anxiety of the death instinct, because that's been experienced already, but people don't realize that. And, to be quite honest, to go into treatment for BPD and to work on recovery and to get to recovered and healed, as I did, and I'm sure others have. I don't know where they are in the world, but I'm sure they're out there living their lives and not talking about it online. I remember that process, and it was like daunting. It was like I thought I had the anxiety of the death instinct like almost every day as the work got deeper, and then it's terrifying. And then, the good news about that is in treatment, though, I was taught how to cope with that. I was taught how to ground myself, because the dissociation, the terror, because what it really is about in BPD recovery and in therapy, and this is why so many people won't go to start with, or if they go even in the beginning of it, it's about opening to something that has already effectively psychologically killed you. And so the death instinct, the anxiety of that comes, it's huge. And people have to learn how to cope with it. And so many people can't even go there to start with. And then so many people run out of the process at that point. Because I remember how really hard that was to be with. And then when you stick with it and you stick with the process, what happens is you're going to go back and it's going to be harder to deal with. It's going to come harder. You're going to get underneath the dissociation. You're going to get to the point in which the original split happened and an understanding of that. And so it's really this process of undoing something that was horrifically terrifying when somebody was like before 2. And so, and whatever that, even if it's perception based or whatever else happened, then so it is dauntingly difficult work to do. And I don't want anyone to think that when I talk about my recovery, and maybe I say it too quickly and I gloss over it, but it was so very scary, totally engulfing, all felt annihilating often. I was so dissociated, having all kinds of flashbacks. But as I learned to cope with them, then I was pretty stubborn. So I would go, I believe in walking into the storm, so to speak, so you can walk out the other side. Because if you stay if you stay in the storm, you're just going to keep getting soaked or really hurt or suffering. And so I would actually then go home after therapy, have a nap. I would be exhausted. And then I would do some things I needed to do to bring the flashbacks back. I would trigger myself back on purpose because I wanted to have it again and again and again, because I knew how to cope with it. I was determined to get through it. And I knew that as harrowing as it was and as scary as it was, every time I came out the other side, I got stronger and stronger and better able to cope with it. But so her resistance, I totally understand that in the first person, because I resisted, even though I was in treatment all along, I resisted going very deep or opening very much for several years, and I didn't know why. And of course, I don't think your daughter knows why either. But it has to do with the unmitigated overwhelm of emotional dysregulation that brings with it not only pain that they can't tolerate, they don't know what to do, they can't soothe, they don't understand where it's coming from, but that feels like it's going to kill them. And Ali said, we didn't wear one, in all honesty. Wait a minute, I think I missed something there. I don't know what I missed there. Didn't wear one, in all honesty. There was no way you can have one on always. Oh, the mask, yes. Well, and I've read some stuff online. There's lots of articles out there about how they can induce other health problems. And so, I just think it's craziness. Wheels, we're going to need to get scuba gear to swim, I guess. I don't know. Or PPE, right? Man, I don't know. And Ali said there was nobody at the lake, but I'm not sure what that means. So we actually lucked out. Oh, that's cool. Deb, to Craig, my daughter is same. Thinks she might feel that she has control. Messaging on the phone, maybe. Well, yeah, it is about control, and it can be for people that are with BP, trying to put effort into not just exploding back, reactively, because in a text, maybe sometimes they can take a minute, but the other thing about that is they can also misinterpret more in text without tone. And you said this, yes, COVID has been very difficult for her. Increasing paranoia. Well, I think it's increasing paranoia. I don't think I'm at a level of paranoia, but I think it's increasing paranoia for people that don't have BPD. So, yes, it's got to be much harder. And switches views from one day to the next. And I'm definitely codependent. What is one difference between just BPD or comorbid BPD NPD? It's a good question. I guess one difference would be... Oh, that's really hard to answer based on what I've read. One answer would be capacity for empathy versus no empathy. But that's not a really good answer because some people with BPD often have the capability and capacity for empathy, except for like maybe 15% severely affected. How do we measure this stuff? We don't. So some people with BPD can really not be showing empathy, but they have a capacity for it. So it depends. I would say that would be one of the key things. But again, it's not the easiest thing to discern in somebody around you as to what's going on for them. But that would be the biggest difference because, like, even it says in the criteria, although it does say for narcissistic personality disorder, lack of empathy. It should really say incapable of empathy. I don't know. And Craig, thanks for answering my question. Oh, you're very welcome. MC, you're right, AJ. My BPD boyfriend always sent me YouTube song videos. Laugh out loud. Well, yeah, it's true. And why would I know that? Gee, I don't know. Kind of because, like, when I had BPD, I think I did that a couple times too. I didn't know why, though. I didn't know what to say and whatnot. And even though I don't know if back then I could say this, but I'm a professional writer. And so, like, well, yeah, and I remember the partner that things weren't too bad. I didn't have BPD then, but I guess I was still trying to compensate for something. Probably Asperger's, which I wouldn't have to do now. But this is years ago. And they actually, when they were talking to me about some stuff they weren't so happy with, they said something about Paper Tiger Words, and there's this song by the Indigo Girls, and it talks about Paper Tiger Words being no match for the predator pain inside her. So I don't know that I really had well, no more than the average person when I had BPD, no more than the average person with that, with how within the splitting cycles and everything, like I explained in the video a couple videos ago, I can't remember what it was called, how they're going to go from the victim to the persecutor to the victim to the persecutor, and the person with codependency is going from the rescuer to the victim, the rescuer to the victim, and sometimes people with codependency slide over to persecutor and react back, etc. So, and I think what I was really trying to say in all of that explanation was, it was the explanation, and also that there's no such thing as counter abuse, okay? Because I don't see any abuse laying around on the counter, you know what I'm saying? But there's no such thing as that. But that was beside the point, but I guess a point. So, yeah, I just muddled up time. So, I in my life, probably wasn't the best example. But that was a long distance. That was a relationship that started long distance. And that's what they were referring to about paper tiger words. So it wasn't because I was writing my own words too. So, Anyway, Allie, wow, that's crazy you said that, AJ, because my ex-boyfriend, who I believe has narcissistic tendencies, he would always send me songs all the time. Yeah, well, people with BPD do it too, so... and don't forget, there are narcissistic defenses, and therefore narcissistic tendencies within BPD too. Sarah, oh my God, I got song lyrics, poems, letters, and many more printed materials when I left. There you go. Sorry to hear that in a way, because you know what it really means. Sita, AJ, that's very interesting what you said about BPDs using someone else's song lyrics and poems. What if they actually write their own poem or song to express their feelings? Well, that's might be a little less problematic, but it's still a little bit suspect in regard to the fact that they are they'll probably be wanting flowery language, and they might be putting forth something that they actually aren't familiar with feeling, but they're trying to feel, wanting to feel, and it sounds really good. So, can I just say, when I had BPD, I've always been a poet, and I've always written poetry, and I've always written things, and so I think I could say I was guilty of that in the past, but probably not for romantic reasons, just probably trying to smooth something over with a friend or something, because I forget how old I was when I had that first relationship, but when it started, and then it was 13 years, so I wasn't hey, I dated somewhat when I first got to university, but that was me dating guys, never mind, I didn't know who the heck I was. I didn't know which way was up. Nothing against guys, by the way, of course. Allie, now that you mention it, do narcissists even feel anything in music? Can they even connect to it in that way? If not, I wonder how they do. How? Well, that would be one of those things that I think goes to the, what's the word I'm looking for? The putting every narcissist in a monolithic group as being all the same category, because to tell you the truth, I really don't know. I would think there might be some variance between the covert and the overt, or the inverted, vulnerable, closeted, etc. It's hard to say, because I think beyond a certain point of narcissistic personality disorder, or malignant narcissism, probably not, but I can't really answer that with any accuracy as to every single person who may have narcissistic traits or be diagnosed with NPD. I really don't know. And Wheels, I called a few places to see if I can find an advocate today. I'm hoping to hear back soon. Oh, I hope you do. I hope you hear something positive back soon. I'm dreading this and struggling emotionally, but I know I can't just deal with the abuse anymore. Well, right, and you really do need an advocate, because you need somebody to help you to decide where to go, because they know something about systems, right? And you said, thanks for trying to talk sense into me last night, AJ. It's been hard. Oh, well, that, you're very welcome, and I know it's very hard, and I'm just glad to see you made, another inquiry in about getting an advocate. I think that's fantastic. Craig to Deb, thanks. I have only gone out for food and drugs since February. I so admire people who have learned to cope with BPD, and that they have willed themselves to live by conscious decision. Well, and the only thing I would say about that, Craig, is it really isn't a matter of will. It's got a lot to do with other things, but just like people say, hey, you got no willpower. By the way, I'm losing lots of weight, but I just wanted to say I've lost lots of weight because it's a medical thing and it's going in the right direction now. But it's like what people say about weight loss, like it's willpower, like why don't you do. But willpower has really been proven to be really kind of like a misnomer as to what really motivates people and why people do what they do, because there's so many secondary gains that are negative, but that are, rather repetition compulsion, like in many different circumstances and or diagnoses for people. So, yeah. Allie, to Wheels, yeah, it is great, yeah. Oh, Allie said, it's true. I used to send lyrics or write songs because it was one of my only ways of expressing my feelings. Yeah. And you said, thanks, AJ. It's just something I was curious about. Oh, you're welcome. Anna, my ex shows empathy, but only when she has gone through whatever the person is going through, and always brings it back to her experience. That's interesting. Shows empathy. So really, yes, a lot of people with BPD can have difficulty with, they have the capacity, so they can show empathy in other ways, right? Like they might be really empathic about things that happen in the world, really like sweet to animals, that kind of thing. But what you're saying there is it sounds like she needed to experience what somebody else experienced for her to really find any kind of feeling to put to that or any empathy for that. So bringing it back to their own experience, that's very common, I think, for a lot of people with BPD. Hey there, Ted. I saw my ex-BPD in the store today with a new guy. And you put supply ? Must say you're calling him new supply, I think. You said, must say I have mixed feelings about it all. Well, and that's understandable, and I just hope that maybe, since you've been in a pretty good place, that maybe the mixed feelings, as you had mixed feelings in the past, aren't as deep, maybe. Oh, I see why. Yeah, that could be. You said it's been a year now, and they looked happy, and I've been thinking about it since the store. Well, yeah, so I get what point you're talking about, because not just that she's with that guy or whatever, but they look happy. Well, who knows? Maybe he's pretty dysfunctional himself, and then looking happy in public is a long way from maybe being happy, so hard to say what's going on there. But I think what you need to remember is more or less, the bad part, the negative, hurtful, painful part of what you experience with this person. And try to stay out, as hard as it is, of the comparative narrative that you think somehow, something's changed with her and this guy's getting all the good stuff, because it's very, very highly unlikely like that. Deb, I like what you say about conscious decision to Craig. She's very insistent on her independence, very stubborn, and lives life how she chooses regardless. Her right, though I struggle with this. Well, well, I don't know that anybody with BPD gets from 0 to wanting treatment or something by willing themselves to live by a conscious decision. Consciousness comes into it when there's awareness created that isn't just stuck in the intellect, but that's a good start in the intellect. But BPD has is really impacting on one's ability to be, quote, self-aware, unquote, because without a self, it's pretty hard to be aware of oneself. So it's the awareness is also a factor in all this, because what I described at length there about what I know from the inside out, it also goes to the fact that people with BPD experiencing this pain and everything I talked about don't have any conscious awareness where it goes back to, or that it might go back to something in childhood or a perception or whatever. and they don't have any of that awareness. So the awareness deficit in BPD, it's like they really need awareness to be able to go forward and, yes, make conscious choices, but they're not willing themselves to do that. They're either choosing it, able to choose it, or they're not able to choose it. And they have to learn how to cope with it. Oh, that's good, Ted, that you're trying and you're working on it and you're not in panic. That's a good thing. That's positive. Allie, I remember before I started realizing I had BPD, I went through partners like underwear, in all honesty, and I don't think I was ever truly happy with my next boyfriend or whoever I was with after. Oh, it's nice of you to share that, Allie. Brothers. And you said I could not be alone and it wasn't healthy. I was almost never alone. Yeah, and of course that's the way it is for a lot of people with BPD. But again, certainly not every single one of them. But, yeah, I can understand that, Wheels, that you're really scared and worried about being thrown into another bad situation. Yes, I can appreciate you've been having to face a lot of fears, and I think you're doing really well with that, because I'm so sorry to hear that. That's not easy stuff at all. It's very, very difficult. Ted said, not in a panic or anything, but it's keeping me up, and I remembered the pain and felt some hate. Well, and be kind to yourself about that, because it's understandable, and those are some now older feelings coming back. And that's okay. Allie, I'm sure my exes felt like Ted too, and at least for myself, no, I wasn't much more happier with my next person. Anna, do BPD feel victimized? Yes, they do. And they will perceive that all over the place, which is about anything and everything often, unless until they get some treatment to start changing that. You said my ex never owns any responsibility. Well, yeah, because they often, the 75%, they were victimized in childhood, and they're living from the past because they don't have a self. And so, they feel like everything that happens is somebody else's fault. And if you're the partner, probably mostly your fault. And it isn't, but that's what they misperceive, and that's what they feel. And then they project that out on people, and they don't take any responsibility. And yes, they're carrying victimization from childhood into adulthood, along with the defense mechanisms that help them cope and survive childhood or early childhood, but that are so maladaptive in adulthood. It's quite a dilemma for people, because, like I've always said, it's nobody's fault they have BPD, and lots of people are who have been diagnosed with BPD were very victimized in childhood, and then where they get stuck is in the right fighting, and but it's not fair, and like, well, yeah, but what am I supposed to do about it? I didn't ask for it. It wasn't my fault. People with BPD can get stuck right there, because the reality is it's not fair. There's no justice. But if you've been abused in your childhood, like 75% of people with BPD, and you were victimized, once you become an adult, you got to do something about it. You got to go get some treatment. You got to do something about it. It becomes your responsibility. And so many people with BPD don't want to hear that, don't want anything to do with that. And it speaks to a lack of not only do they have emotional arrested development, but they are immature and they don't have emotional intelligence, right? So things that all can be changed into therapy. MC, my BPD boyfriend takes a lot of selfies of himself. I don't know many men that do this, laugh out loud. Do you think that is a trait of NPD? Well, I mean, it could be, but I wouldn't be in a hurry to jump to say yes, because we're living in a crazy culture where I think a lot of people don't have anything particularly wrong with them, take way too many pictures of themselves and post them all over social media. Some of them are narcissists, but many of them aren't. It's just called everybody needs too much attention today. So, I mean, is that cluster B on the rise only, or is that just culture also? And the way that kids are growing up, which is just like, I couldn't imagine growing up like that. But I think I think it could also be like if it was within BPD, it could be that he feels pretty insecure. Maybe even if he's good looking or whatever, maybe he feels insecure, and maybe he takes lots of selfies at certain points when everything's looking the best, whether he posts them or not, and it's probably for attention. So that can be within the realm of BPD as well. I certainly don't think that selfies would qualify as a trait of NPD by themselves. But see, that's why I stay up all that social media. I don't care what people had for lunch, breakfast, dinner, or anything else like that, personally. Even when I talk to my friends, I don't think, maybe something comes up, but I don't think I say, hey, what'd you have for dinner tonight? I don't need a picture either, so. He said, it makes you feel crazy sometimes. Well, sounds like he's pretty focused on it. It's probably pretty overcompensatory. Oh, you're welcome, Wheels. See, Ty, to MC. Could it be that they take so many selfies because they are desperately trying to capture? Capture themselves from different angles and thus attempt to, quote, create their self. Look, it could be something to do with the lost self. That's great insight there. Deb, it has been suggested recently that I have a competency test done on her daughter in effort to prevent her from returning to Australia. She's 27, but I believe she can be a danger to herself. Well, then I think that sounds like, yes, definitely. If you can get that done, it sounds like a good idea. And Deb said, where do her rights end and my responsibility take over? She would hate me forever if I were to do this. Does she not have a right to make her own decisions despite my fears? Well, I guess it goes really to the matter of how competent you think she is or she isn't, right? So if you really believe that there is a lack of competency her as an adult to take care of herself or keep herself safe, that's a really tough call. Because obviously you've got peers and they're obviously based on past experience. And, if she's been, had many suicide attempts or been suicidal, but the thing is, that's the other thing. If it's centered around that, this is hard to say. They're unlikely. A competency test by legal standards, not that I know that much about it, but what I do know about it, if somebody is suicidal or has been suicidal, or may be suicidal in the future but isn't suicidal during the day and time of the test, they're unlikely to be ruled incompetent for that based on that. But if there are other issues around the way she's living her life and things she's doing, then, but yeah, so you have to really look at what is, I would probably say you'd be best to consult a lawyer or a paralegal. Someone ask them legally what is incompetency in a mental health realm legally defined as before you stick your neck out to do that. Ted, AJ, why do I feel like I started to miss her? Last time I saw them, it didn't have any effect on me. I feel strange, miss her, sadness, hate, everything at the same time. Well, I think it might be largely, Ted, that it's what you saw and what you perceived, and probably the evidence was there, that they looked so happy. I think that might be what's causing you more issues this time than the last time you saw them. And it's a perception, because it probably goes to that a little bit of cognitive dissonance again, and also to what's largely cognitive distortions for people, but what people often believe is, does this mean I got it wrong? So you might not be thinking this, but it might be thought similar to this. Does this mean I got her wrong and I shouldn't have given up and that she really wasn't that bad and now she's going to be really happy with this guy because they look so happy? I think that would be a big trigger, Ted. I think that's probably the reason. And then you're feeling, it's a comparative narrative, so you have to be very careful with that. But I take you at your word that when you saw them, they looked pretty happy. So maybe if you could try to just go back to thinking about, put it this way to yourself, they looked happy. but I don't really know if they are happy. And then again, the next more difficult step would be kind of journaling about the fact that whether she's really happy or not, which I really doubt it, but whether she's really happy or not, you have to look into what that's triggering in you. And the best I can say is and try to figure out a way to sort of let that go. But like you said, you've had the feeling of hate rising, so it just sounds like it's kind of at least partially, just a little bit maybe, opened up a wound, right, that you pretty much had healed. So it's just a matter of trying to re-heal that by reframing what you're thinking, and if you're in a comparative narrative. And Allie said, my current boyfriend has BPD traits like me. He got diagnosed, but they still are figuring it out. And he's very into his appearance, but he is so insecure even though he is one of the most handsome men that you ever met. Well, yeah. Interesting, Allie. No judgment. Just after all you've been through and everything, you want to keep dating somebody who's been diagnosed with BPD. Just saying. No, not judging. Just, observing. Hey there, Rob. If someone is going to take a picture of their food, I only want to see it on a plate in front of me as well. Otherwise, I'm not interested, Lapo. That's funny. By the way, Rob, do you know if the Leafs are playing tonight or not? Because I thought I saw a commercial for an exhibition game with Montreal. And I think I taped it if it happened. I mean, because, when I looked on something else, I didn't see it. But so, unfortunately, what's happening in baseball, but the NHL is, I think, got its game together and is going to go ahead because of the way they're doing it. Of course, baseball has more trouble with that, being that, except for the team in Toronto, which can't even play in Toronto, isn't allowed in Ontario right now, they're all stuck in the U.S., where apparently these numbers, whatever that means, are incredibly, incredibly high. And Allie said, it bothers me, but I guess I guess because I have BPD, I can understand it. Be careful of that, because the more you understand, unless he's really far down the road in treatment, you're still going to put yourself in a situation that so many other people are in. Yeah, that's interesting, Wills, that you weren't glad at the time, but you were practically the last kid in your school to get a smartphone. Wow. You'd like to go back to the old dumb phone. Pardon me. I can't even imagine what it would have been like, because, of course, I grew up with, phones were stuck on the wall for all my childhood, teen years, 20s and 30s, and I don't know how long this stuff's been around, but I remember the first cell phone I had, too, was, huge. Not huge like they show in old, shows or whatever, but, yeah. And then I found my old iPhone 4GS or whatever it was called, because I was listening to the playlist the other night. So, but then I forgot it has the pictures of my late dogs on it, and so I had to cry first. But it's so tiny, is my point. And I have the iPhone, whatever I have now, the 11s, and I have a 10, and I still have an 8. And, but I like the Pro size, the Max, whatever the 11's called, 11 Max. Pro Max, I don't know what it's called. But I like the bigger size of phone. So when I look at the 4G one, it's like, whoa. So going from a huge phone to a shrimpy phone to back to at least not, shrimpy, but the screen's bigger. But the bottom line is, sometimes I really wish we had cell phones back in the day when I was with that family of origin. God. And what was going on. And the long trips we'd taken, how much like a hostage I felt. And it would have been entertainment at least, but I'm sure if I'd have had it when I was a kid, I would have got totally addicted at that point. Our life cure. After a breakup, your awareness of your ex grows. I was horrified when I noticed how my ex BPD mimicked so much of my being. She literally took my likes, dislikes, and interests as hers. Yes, that can happen a lot. Oh, Rab, I said I recorded it and you just gave me the results. Man, why? Huh, you ever seen that Seinfeld episode? Where, what's his face, Kramer from across the hall, and Seinfeld is sitting down to watch the Mets game or Yankees or whichever it was. And Kramer comes in and tells him what happened, and that's how I feel right now. Aw, okay, well, I'll probably still watch it, but when I record sports, I kind of like to not know the result first, which this isn't the first time this has happened, but I'm glad they won. Maybe I don't have to watch it now then. Wheels, to Deb. Were they suggesting some kind of power of attorney? I know a little bit about that stuff thanks to my psycho mom. There are several categories depending on how competent she is. Yeah, well, I would think it would take legal investigation to look at the risk-reward factor on why Deb wants to get her probably declared incompetent. Allie, oh no, I really do agree with you, AJ. It freaked me out before, but he has a lot of self-awareness. Oh, and he's been in therapy, okay. He still has issues, and I'm giving it a try, but if it gets too much, I'm not. Well, good, and when you say he has been in therapy, then one hopes he's still in it, right? Oh, good. I'm glad to hear you have that boundary, Allie. Deb said thank you to Craig. I guess I'm not really here. Hello, is this thing working? No, it doesn't matter. You don't have to thank me, but I think I said a few things, but never mind. Just kidding. I'm told she has to want to help herself. Well, this is very true. And that I need to take care of myself so I can be there for her if she chooses. Okay. Well, hopefully he keeps up the good work then, Allie. Yes. That's okay, Rob. I'll get over it. You said you're so sorry, and I wrote it right away, but taped it part after. Yeah, that's okay. Deb, it was someone from the peer support group to Wheels. I shut it down immediately so they didn't pursue with details. Okay, I'll stay out of the loop, Deb. That's cool. Seemed like we walked down a path there that isn't even being walked or something. I don't know. It's interesting, on these topics, when largely people with codependency, if anybody's here with that, don't want to share what they actually think about, or hopefully you're at least thinking about it, or if you watch us back, you'll at least think about it. If they have BPD or if they have NPD or if they have comorbidity, somehow both, whatever that really actually means, and whatever actual percentage, because there's no clear anything on it, that people just need to go by their experience and how much they're in pain and how much difficulties in the relationship, and take action focused on self to help oneself, and as GB shared earlier, self-preservation. Well, it sounds, Deb, like you're in a place which is understandable, but you're very much in a caretaking role of a person that you really can't control, even though she's your daughter, right? It's very different in that type of relationship. But yeah, I don't know what else to say to that. Because really it's, I think a lot of parents do best by, and detaching doesn't mean not talking to your adult child with BPD, but detaching with love and just sort of stepping back a bit, because, kind of waiting to see what they do or don't choose. It's really difficult. Wheels. AJ, it was pretty annoying at the time. By the time I got to high school, almost all our assignments required us to pull out our phones. Oh, interesting. I always had to remind the teachers I didn't have one. Oh, yeah. I'm sure somebody else went through that when all the computers got into school. fanciest thing that happened when I was in school as a kid was we got calculators. And when we went to grade 5, we didn't have to write in pencil anymore. We got pens. Wow, how antiquated is that? But yeah, I mean, it must have been the same with, like, I didn't realize in school that they had people pulling out their phones to do stuff. And then I'm sure once the computers hit, of course, you know, that might have been an issue for some kids that maybe there wasn't a computer at home yet. Way back, whenever. Maybe not that far back, but interesting. So I guess to my topic, I would say, though it matters greatly to people for all kinds of reasons, I think what matters more is that people get themselves out of these relationships and start getting them into their own healing and recovery journeys and getting past, you know, getting into no contact and getting past the, the guilt, the shame, the blame, the feeling like you're responsible, the holding their feelings, which even parents of adult children can't do. I mean, they try, they do, but it's not real healthy to do that because you got to take care of yourself. Everybody does. So, yeah, I'm just trying to think if I have anything else to say on this because a lot of people listen, and that's fine. People listen, and so I guess I would just reiterate that I think what's most important for people is knowing that whether you know or not for sure which label fits, or if more than one fits, or co-occurring disorders, that if they're not getting treatment and you're being traumatized and it's a toxic relationship, then it doesn't really matter because it's not going to give closure, not going to change anything that you've experienced, whether it's called BPD or NPD or comorbidly BPD, NPD. So, and I thought this would be an important topic to talk about and for people to think about because just on this channel, I mean, people watch all kind of channels, but it's a prelude to what I hope to be able to deliver soon, which is something a little more definitive about this. But it won't be like super definitive because there is nothing definitive out there about this, which was in a way shocking to me because I figured, like, if you go researching other things, not that I believe all those studies are scientific or anything, right? Like, they're ideologies, I'm always saying. But I was just hoping to see more to kind of make more sense out of it. But I think I know what alley I have to travel up now to talk about it. But even some of those pioneers I've seen say one thing and then say another thing. Or in one book, they say one thing, in another book, they say another. And then I always recall the book I read, I forget the exact title, by Lowen, who actually categorizes borderline personality above narcissism on a scale as he goes down. I forget what other things he was talking about. So, and then of course Kernberg, and I'll probably be talking more about this in other videos, but Kernberg doesn't always say or write, but has often said borderline personality organization rather than disorder, which is probably the path I'm going to have to follow that makes sense of how to explain comorbidity between BPD and NPD, but there just isn't a lot of evidence out there to really quote. You're welcome, Deb. And Allie, AJ, do you think that people with BPD work better with people who have boundaries? Generally speaking, no. I mean, because they usually can't handle the boundaries. If somebody's really getting a lot of treatment and they're going to stick with it, well, they might have learned that. They might be getting better with boundaries. Oh, really, Deb? Yeah, the ing is pretty key in that sentence because, there's about, I don't know, I would weight it at 75% crap, 25% good. Because I'm done with that website. I won't ever write there again. And there's some excellent professionals on there. And then there's a whole lot of hooey in between. And I feel, I don't even know what to think of somebody. there's more than one, I think, writing over there, and they say their diagnosis is BPD subtype ASPD. They believe that. They take that on. Wow. I guess I just feel sad for them, because that's the ideology of the pseudoscience of psychiatry. People shouldn't allow themselves to be pathologized like that. So I don't really see that site the same way you do, Deb. I think there are some professionals over there. There's a couple I follow. They do fantastic. They give fantastic answers. And then there's a lot of maybe there's a few others doing well too. I don't know. I don't really follow. And then there's just a lot of what I would call simply clowns. They're just pushing stuff around in circles that makes really not a whole lot of sense. And then there's a couple out there that bite everybody's head off when they give their answers too. So there's a real advertisement for, they're recovering and they got emotional regulation. Yeah, really, where? Anyway, that's just my take on that site, and so many others like it, because the propagating of so much false information that then leads what? YouTubers go read it and say it? I don't know. Or vice versa. Who knows? But there are some professionals that are really good over there. Might be the odd person. I don't know. There might be some that are really on target with what they say about their experience with BPD. I don't really read it, so I don't know. I read a lot of outrageous things, though. And Allie, you said you were just curious if they would be willing to listen more than opposed to someone with NPD. I don't know that comparing those two things really gives you the answer that you're looking for. That's just my opinion. Because I think that's a false equivalency. And again, a lot of people are out there doing that. And that's why I thought of this topic. Because, it's just not a measure of anything particularly. Sitai, AJ, do you think people with BPD can become psychologists or psychiatrists? Well, it doesn't matter what I think, because they are. They do. I think it's problematic in a lot of cases, and I don't know, it depends if they recovered, if they really went through therapy or not, and I think maybe some have, and I think lots haven't. And same is true with narcissists. There's enough narcissistic clinicians, narcissistic personality disorder, psychiatrists or psychologists or whatever out there to choke a horse. It's interesting when you say there that there's you only read on there. Well, I definitely would diversify your sources, but lots of different views can be confusing, and sometimes they're not even valid views. They're just nonsense. Lots of fighting, that everywhere but there are some great nuggets, So I think, myself, I just got out of there because now, I got out of there before I even knew they were doing this new moderation thing, but because I didn't get fast enough to spell checking, they just collapsed an answer. I'm like, well, if you're going to be control freakers like that, how about it? But the other thing is, it was going to get to a point for me. It got to a point for me where I couldn't stand to read all the other stuff without wanting to challenge it. And I thought, nah, I'm just out of here. I don't think those sites really are so helpful. I mean, maybe, but I think they do too much damage in the process of trying to be helpful. And Kim, I don't know what context you're speaking from. Well, I think what's really important about that is, Jake, lay down. No, that's not what's really important about that. What's really important about that is a person has to do their own healing and recovery fully first, and then it is beautiful to help people. Allie, I ask questions even if it's not necessarily something I follow. I just like hearing what you have to say. Well, that's fine. Wheels, last night after the stream, I was thinking about how I can deal with all the guilt I'm feeling. I started reminding myself of the physical scars I have from the family of origin and how I got them. Well, yeah, because I mean, guilt is, it's interjected into the inner critic, so it's taken on, especially when you were younger, Wheels, you were awash with it because kids are like sponges, and parents are doing horrible things, and kids take it on like it's their fault, and it's also a shame wound. But you have to keep, whatever is working to help you to work through it, because it's not your fault, and there is no guilt on your part. I mean, you're not. It's toxic guilt that you're experiencing, actually. Oh, I see what you mean. You only read there and you don't talk or respond. Yeah, no, I can understand that. I read a couple professionals over there. Actually, I did contact one of them, but privately, and it was interesting because she's kind of a character. But and she just thanked me, and it was a question or something too, and then I was just I like most of her. There's a couple of her answers, but I wouldn't say anything. And then I got a message recently from her, and it was just like a commercial. I thought, really? But she's writing a book, so I guess anybody that had private messengers, she sent the message to, which is fine. Um, well, Ali, it really has, in your support of Wheels, it really has been, well, it's been shoved on you, but more to the point, you've internalized it. People internalize it in childhood, so then it's a process of healing that and letting it go. But it is toxic guilt, and it's also toxic shame. So, and a good person to read about that is John Bradshaw, who wrote "Healing the Shame That Binds You," and I'm not sure if he has a book called "Toxic Shame." I don't know. Somebody does, but yeah. Anyway, if you think about it as toxic, it can at least delineate for you that it's not anything like for what you felt, Ali, or for Wheels. It's not anything that belongs to you at all. It's toxic. Yeah, it's all about self-preservation, Wheels, and but hey, nobody gets out of those kind of families of origin without feeling guilty. And I mean, I remember when I found that book, Toxic Parents. When I read that back in, I don't know what year it was. It was like my jaw was hanging open because it was helping me to further understand. Like, wait a minute, wow, you mean like it wasn't all my fault? Because it was them. Like when I was a little kid, how could it be my fault? So, Ali, yes, I hate feeling that way, AJ. Thanks for the recommendation. I will definitely look for that book. Yeah, Healing the Shame That Binds You is a great book by Bradshaw. Ali, I already have separated It's Not My Feelings, but it still lingers. Well, yeah, and it can take a while. I mean, it's a process, right? So people take their own amounts of time, and it depends what else is going on. Like Wheels has so much going on that for self-preservation, Wheels needs the first goal is hopefully get an advocate and get out of there, and just keep trying to process in the meantime. So, and I think the other thing, I should have said it ages ago, but don't forget that narcissism doesn't always indicate narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissism is present in BPD. Some people may struggle with a little bit of narcissism, but it doesn't really put them in cluster B. And then again, part of healing and recovering from, inner child wounds, woundedness in childhood is, becoming that in object relations, the whole part unit, the healthy individual who knows themselves, living a balanced, being your own best friend and that kind of thing. Then people have healthy narcissism, which is not like unhealthy narcissism or the narcissism in BPD or NPD. So, and I think, I don't know why, but like I just, well, not, I don't have the world's biggest channel, so I shouldn't have to worry about this. But when I talk about, I got a couple of videos up already, but when I talk about narcissism in BPD, right, I think it just might lead a lot of people to jump to think, well, then this person with BPD's got NPD too. And, is, so yeah, it needs to be qualified that they're not exactly the same. But anyway, I think it's a really important question that people ask themselves when they have, a relative, or it's any relationship type, or it's a friend, or if it's someone you have to work with. I don't know if anybody's really working together these days in the same physical space, but or a significant other, or a boyfriend or girlfriend. It's really important that people ask themselves this question about, are they, because many codependents are so over-focused on if it's BPD or if it's NPD or if it's comorbidity if to the point where people have expressed they feel like if they don't figure it out, they can't heal. And if they went on the journey of research I went on, they'd be pretty disappointed. He said, I find since I've gotten stronger with knowing myself and my boundaries, my mom pushes and ups the ante, and it's so hard to deal with, even with all the work I've done. Well, yes, because narcissists will up the ante. People with BPD can up the ante too, but yes, up in the ante is just their way of, still fighting for what it is that they want, which is, I guess for most narcissists, to one degree or another, is supply and control. Obviously control. So, and I'm sorry to hear you're going through that, because you got a little while to wait before you get out of there. So again, I hope your strategy of just trying not to be around her as much as you can is working. And you said you have moments where you slip back in old ways of thinking, and I'm so glad you said it's a process as long as I don't get stuck in it. Well, yeah, and everything is a process, and everybody has to be, begin from where they are today with whatever. If I've said anything helpful or not, or given anybody some food for thought, then yeah, I'm just encouraging people to think about it. Because I'm kind of stunned by the lack of, not that I believe their studies are scientifically evidentiary, but they have studied it very little. So it's kind of looking like BPD, NPD comorbidity reminds me of the way that psychiatrists I'm not saying regular YouTubers, just that I've seen at different, conferences talking, whatever. When they talk, on these YouTube videos, that they're not regular YouTubers, but they'll say, well, I guess Grande does this all the time, but whatever. They'll say he's now into sensationalism as well, so that looks oh so professional, but it doesn't matter what I think. But they'll always talk about, like I've said before, what they think they see in the brain in people with BPD, or I don't know if they look at people with NPD or whatever, but they don't think about the trauma first, that second, and they don't ever talk about the neuroplasticity that's very real. That means these healing and recovery journeys are not just psychological or emotional or spiritual. They actually are about changing the brain. So whatever is the impact of trauma on the brain, they're just never going to succeed in seriously proving it's a brain disorder, which has got to be a bummer for them. Wills, I'm actually dealing with the anniversary of one of the worst ones I got. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Wow, really sorry to hear that, because that would be very difficult on top of everything that you're already going through, which is like more than anybody should have to deal with. I'm really sorry about that. And Allie, thanks, AJ. Your words really do help me so much, and I continue so hard to work on these new tools I found. Yeah, well, that's, yeah. And when you work on them, like, that's a process too. So, but anyway, I think I'm fresh out of things to say without talking in another circle on this topic. And, yeah, on the topic I'm speaking of, not what people have been talking about in between. So, yeah. And I think anybody that has BPD, people can recover. And for some people, it's much more complicated than others, depending on all kinds of circumstances. But people can recover, and it's not just get remitted, because if people are remitted and they think they have poor traits, well, they're still going to have some stuff to deal with. You can really get beyond it. And then people that want to, work as a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a social worker or whatever, then that's the time to do it, or when you're in therapy and you've had so much therapy that you really you have found yourself and you know who you are and you're on that journey and you sort of climb the one mountain and so to speak, then that's the time. But I would just couple words about this. I would just say to anybody, well, people with BPD have gone on when they really haven't had much treatment to become mental health professionals. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't have some sensitivity, that they wouldn't be in many ways good, but the other thing you have to be prepared for is you're going to work with a lot of clients who could trigger you if you're not sort of over those and heal your triggers. Wheels, I think it's making a good reminder of why I need to leave, though. Oh, yeah, well, you just definitely, I don't think, like Wheels, if you ever doubt that you have to leave, just hear my voice going, leave, you gotta get out, you deserve it. Oh, you're welcome, little girl. Yeah, so everybody take care, because, like I said, I hope this topic gives people food for thought. I'll have more coming on it, and I hope it's helpful to people, and I have run out of things to say about it for now, which is probably a good thing, because this is at the, it's 2 hours and 10 minutes is probably a good time to stop. Anyway, so take care, and hopefully I'll be live streaming again soon. Never know on what topic, though. I don't know, so we'll see. Everybody take care.